U.S. President Donald Trump is holding a social media summit today. Many are expecting it to be a forum for people to criticize what they view as anti-conservative social media bias. They point to the list of invitees. The White House did not extend invitations to big social media groups such as Facebook, Google, or Twitter. Instead, the forum will feature conservative groups, Republican leaders, and conservative social media influencers. The White House has also invited some far-right internet personalities who are known to espouse extremist views. For more on today's summit, we're joined by Kat Zakrzewski from The Washington Post. She is their technology policy reporter and the author of its daily newsletter called Technology 202. So, Kat, this social media summit is happening without some major social media companies attending. So what can you tell us about, first of all, who's not there?
That's exactly right. So today, as the White House launches its social media summit, you won't see executives from Facebook, Twitter, Google, the big tech platforms that have really been in the crosshairs here in Washington in attendance. As you mentioned earlier, though, we will see a lot of conservative leaders, some far-right internet personalities, and just earlier this morning and this afternoon, the president has been tweeting about the event. He's been threatening the tech companies in these tweets and saying that a big focus of this event is going to be on those allegations of anti-conservative bias that he's repeatedly making. So I think that it's going to be a tough and bruising day for the tech companies at this event.
Since you mentioned that, let's talk about that, because Trump, as you mentioned, has accused these tech companies of censoring conservative users and websites. Here's part of a tweet that he sent this morning. A big subject today at the White House Social Media Summit will be the tremendous dishonesty, bias, discrimination, and suppression practiced by certain companies. We will not let them get away with it much longer. So what could the president mean by that?
So that's one of the challenging things as President Trump repeatedly makes these claims of anti-conservative bias. He's slammed the companies, but it's unclear exactly what the White House would see as a remedy for these allegations of anti-conservative bias. I mean, right now, the tech companies strongly deny that there's any form of anti-conservative bias on their platforms. Many people in the tech industry view these accusations as the White House not understanding how their algorithms work, and they say that these are based on, one-off incidents, and the evidence for this is disputed. And so, but what we are seeing is these allegations that the president is repeatedly making, both from the White House and on Twitter, are really trickling into the policy debate on Capitol Hill, where the tech companies are also under fire. So whether, people are talking about moderating content online on the Hill, or talking about, antitrust action against the tech companies, these accusations of anti-conservative bias have really riled up some of the Republicans, like Senator Ted Cruz, and led them to call for greater regulation of these platforms.
As you mentioned, there's been some controversy surrounding some of the people who are attending. You mentioned some far-right extremist groups or influencers. Tell us about them.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest concerns today. My colleague Tony Rahm had a piece earlier this week that with some of the far-right influencers who are expected to attend, for example, James O'Keefe, who's the co-founder of Project Veritas, and other commentators who have been criticized for racist remarks online, there's concern that the White House is giving a platform to people who are spreading hate and controversial content online, which has been a big challenge for these tech companies in the U.S. And so I think there's some concern here among social media experts and observers that by having an event like this today, it could just further fuel some of those personalities. And
wouldn't it be fair for some to suggest that by just having people who have these racist, extremist views, to have them at a summit at the White House with the president, that is somehow tacit approval of some of those ideas from the White House?
I mean, I think it's, very telling that these people are on the guest list for today's event. And, obviously the social media and some of these You know, you could call them influencers. Some of these people have even been called trolls by mainstream outlets like the New York Times. Like, these people really did play a role in stoking support for President Trump ahead of the 2016 election online. And so to now give them this platform, to have them standing in the White House in the Rose Garden this afternoon, I think there's a lot of concern about what that could mean ahead of the 2020 election.
And do you think this is deliberate by the White House, by Trump and his staff, in terms of learning more about ways to maybe leverage social media for his re-election campaign, given the role that they played in the previous campaign?
I mean, I think that's probably a big reason why they're on the White House's guest list at this time. You know, I don't have specific insight into how they put this together, but if you just look at the list and the names on there, it seems like a lot of these people, you know, are people who have potentially been retweeted by the president at some time, or who have generated memes in his support. And so I think that obviously the White House, like any of the candidates running in 2020, is thinking a lot about their digital strategy, and it's possible some of these people could once again play a role in that. And how big of a role do you think social media will play in the 2020 election? I think it's going to play a major role. I mean, if history teaches us anything, you know, since the 2008 election, social media just continues to play a bigger and bigger role in each of these events. I mean, I think it will be slightly different in 2020, and hopefully people will look at the information that they see on social media with a bit more skepticism after what we learned in 2016 about how social media can be manipulated by foreign actors. But, you know, these trends aren't changing, right? While there may be some differences over time in, you know, whether people are getting more news on Instagram versus Facebook or YouTube versus Twitter, there's just a general shift away from traditional media to these social media outlets. And, you know, the president has proven he can be quite masterful in leveraging them for his gain. And so I think, you know, that's not something that's going to change at all heading into this next election cycle. Kat, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Kat Zakrzewski, Washington Post technology policy reporter.